Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Mixed Frequency Podcast. I'm Xzavier,
I'm Deja.
and this is an Xzavier episode again.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about um, something that's been kind of on my mind for the past couple of months, and uh, it's completely random. Deja, I don't know if you remember what I said I was going to talk about. Do you?
Vaguely, but you can give another explanation just to
Okay.
refresh my memory.
So if I asked you what instrument the devil played, what would you say?
I would say like the violin or
Right.
something, right?
And that is actually, well, let me ask you, why would you say that?
So really it's only because of that song The Devil Went Down to Georgia.
Right.
They're having like a fiddle contest or something like that. And so I guess since hearing that, I just associate the fiddle or the violin or a string instrument with Satan.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of what I would have said too, except I also remember like for some one reason or another, I have seen a lot of like really old school Disney cartoons,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes the devil shows up in things like that, and he plays the fiddle there too.
Disney cartoons like what?
Like, I don't know, I don't remember what they're called, but I like distinctly remember Mickey Mouse in black and white being in hell, basically, and the devil like playing a fiddle at him. And
Oh,
the fact that it was black and white made me go, well, obviously it was before the devil went down to Georgia, or
right.
at least the recording that I remember.
Okay.
Um, so maybe there's something else going on here. So I start looking into it, and it actually spiraled out so hard that in order for me to explain what I ended up finding, I have to go all the way back to like the Crusades.
Okay.
Um, so we're going to start there, and it's
Okay.
going to seem
Explain to
like
me. Sorry. Explain to me the Crusades.
the Crusades.
Yeah.
So again, I went back to the period of time that I didn't actually end up studying, like I didn't take the time to learn the details of the Crusades like
Mm-hmm.
in detail.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone listening, please do not take this as your understanding of the Crusades. But in general, the first crusade is like when the Christians of the period decided that they needed to be able to go back to Jerusalem,
Mm-hmm.
which was slash is the Holy Land. Um,
Okay.
and at the time, it was under the control of uh, Muslims, from what I
Okay.
can understand. That like they use a whole bunch of different words to talk about it, and I'm not sure how all those things connect.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what the crusade was. It was this really like um, really long and kind of like messy attempt to reclaim the Holy Land by
Okay.
the Christians.
Okay. That's good enough. I just needed like a
A frame of
overview.
reference.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, um, what I ended up finding out is that there's a whole lot of reasons that the violin is associated with the devil.
Mm-hmm.
The earliest one has to do with the fact that the violin actually comes from, it has a progenitor instrument called that came from the Middle East,
Okay.
or well, that came not the Middle East exclusively, but what those people would have called the East.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically associated the East with the devil for reasons I'm about to go into now.
Got you.
Um,
Okay.
so what I found is that the East being associated with Satan can be traced back to the period just before the Crusades. At the time, Western Christians knew very little about Islam, and they portrayed them as pagans and or followers of Satan. Um, so the First Crusade became, so that was just their idea of them in general.
Okay.
Um, and then the First Crusade became their first period of like um, elongated exposure. And as preparation for the First Crusade, what a lot of the Christian writers at the time did was really lean into that perception of them being like pagans and devil worshippers and monsters and stuff to get
Mhm.
people like,
On
because
their
you
side.
you have to, yeah,
Yeah.
because you have to. Let me see if I can find the source here so I can send you the picture. Um, oh,
That's
here
really
we go.
wild. I mean, I feel like I shouldn't have expected anything else that would be connected to some sort of like religious propaganda situation,
Hmm.
but I don't know.
So if you take a look at that map, when I'm talking about Christians, it says it on the map, but when I'm talking about Christians, I'm talking about the stuff that's marked in red.
Okay, so for people listening, gonna try to give a quick description. Unless you want to do it, you can do it. You'd probably be better off describing this map
Yeah, well,
quickly.
I'm assuming we're just gonna put the map up, but I'll describe it now just in case, like you said. So up, if you're looking at a map of like Europe, um, I'm gonna describe it based on Italy because everyone knows where Italy is because it's the boot. It's shaped like a heel. So if you're looking at Italy and you go up into France and then all the way across and over to Russia and then back down towards where the Mediterranean Sea is, that is Christian territory based on this map.
So all of it is from what I'm looking at.
Most of it, but then to the right is what's marked as Muslim territory, which is like part of near Spain, um, apparently all of Africa, and the Middle East. And then there's this teeny little slice on the left hand side, on like the leftern on the left
That's a new
coast
one.
of
On the left turn.
on the left coast of what is now, I want to say that's, I'm not even gonna guess,
Yeah, I was
but
gonna
it,
say,
it's
oh,
it's the Middle East. um Even that is questionable, but on the left hand side of Muslim territory at the time is this little yellow slice, um that's marked as the Crusader states, and all the way at the end of that is Jerusalem, also known as the Holy Land.
gotcha.
So the reason I launched into all of this is they really need to like try to gear people up to do this because they're coming from a long way away. Like
Yeah,
it's not something you can just be like, let me reclaim the Holy Land real quick.
yeah.
Like it's a whole protracted uh event. So
Okay.
let's back up. So the people that they were fighting, the Christians, they would have called them Turks, Arabs,
Okay.
or Saracens, I think is how you say that word.
Mm-hmm.
It's Saracens. Um, and the term Saracen apparently was additionally like was also tied to polygamy and paganism, which all of those things together, like the fact that they tied them to like devil worshiping and just general barbarism and also polygamy,
Mm-hmm.
led to the perception of people from the East as hedonistic devil worshippers. And this is all in like the 11th. This is all before and by the 11th century of like modern history, not modern history, of history.
History. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Um, and so one of the interesting things is the idea of like decadent Easterners still kind of like floats around a little bit. Like, have you ever seen the movie 300?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So do you remember how they portrayed? Did my video go out again?
It
It
did.
did. Do you remember why? Do you remember how they portrayed the leader of the invading army, Xerxes?
Mm-hmm.
You remember how they had him in? Yeah, like they had him in that like uh brothel type place at all times. It's
Yeah.
it's very much the like reclining on this golden throne eating grapes kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so part of me feels like the idea of them being like uh hedonistic almost might be even older than this, but I did not have time to go into all that because it was beyond the scope. So
Okay.
suffice it to say that they've attributed to the East hedonism and devil worshippers and
Gotcha.
devil worship.
Okay.
So because of all this, when the rhubarb and the rubec, which are progenitor instruments to the violin and the fiddle.
Okay.
Hang on, I have a
So
picture for
those
you.
are the instruments. The rhubarb and the rubec are the
Right.
instruments that came before the violin and the fiddle.
Right. So let
Gotcha.
me get you. This is a uh this here is a rhubarb, I believe.
Every time you say it, I just think of like, I don't know if that's a vegetable. I guess it's a vegetable.
You're
Rhubarb.
thinking of rhubarb, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a rhubarb. I could not find a rubec,
Oh,
but
wow.
like you can see it, right?
Okay,
So
so I guess if you're just listening and not watching, this is a rhubarb, and it looks like how you would imagine a violin or a fiddle, but it's got like an extended bottom. So like, have you seen those shoes that like, I don't know, for lack of a better term, the hipsters wear where they've got the large, like the extra material at the bottom?
yeah.
That's what it looks like, just attached to the back of a violin.
Yeah. So at that point, like, so basically these instruments kind of keep that these instruments came to the West, which in this context means basically like Christian Europe.
Okay.
um it came to the West through Arabia, and because it came from the East, it just carried those associations with it.
Wow. Okay. I
So
mean, that
that
tracks. That makes sense. Why, not it makes sense, but I can see why it would be carried on that way. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So it's like because it was an Eastern thing and those Easterners were this, that, and the other, it
Right.
kept those associations. So those two instruments, the rhubarb and the rubec,
Hmm.
were refined into the violin in the West by craftsmen like, and in particular, two names kept coming up. I'm not sure if that's Andre or Audrey,
Hmm.
Amati and Gasparo di Salon.
Hmm.
Um,
You better accent.
Listen, I probably messed that up,
I'm
but
sure you did, but
somewhere there's like an Italian person who's like on a mission
you're
to
on their list
right now.
now.
Yeah. Um, so but despite the fact that they are basically like modern day fiddles and violins
Mhm.
now, just in general, they keep the association with like
The rhubarb and the
sin,
rubec.
basically.
Yeah.
Um, So one of the fun facts I came across though is that, and this is going to actually come up again later, but some of the instruments made by those two guys are still around. Like, and this is like based on what I could tell. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not sure. It gets kind of confusing because the Amatis, in particular, become a family of violin makers. So there's like all these different like.
Is that where, like, how in certain cultures, like, if somebody has the last name, you're like, oh, that family, they're shoemakers or they're something makers, or you know what I mean?
I don't know if that's where this comes from, but it definitely is that kind of situation.
Okay.
Like
That's random.
they
I just thought
are
about
the
that.
Amatis and they make violins.
Okay.
Like and they're, I don't know if they're the best at it, but like they're up there. They're
They're
a
known for,
famous name.
yeah,
Like
got you.
having an Amati violin means something.
Okay, got you.
Um
So at this point, we've got the violin is sinful because it came from the East.
Basically. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you would have asked one of them that, if they would have been like, ah yes, like if they would have laid it out for you like that, but
Yeah.
the association just kind of held.
Hmm.
Um And so, in addition to all of this, there are multiple periods of time where multiple sects of the Christian church prohibited or discouraged dance on the grounds either that it was sinful in and of itself or that it led to sinful actions.
Dancing.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it for long enough, it really hasn't changed that much today, to be honest with you.
I guess. Yeah. I guess. Yeah.
It's because what happens is when people gather, and they start like partying. They
They
start
dance.
dancing, and when the party goes on for a certain amount of time, it leads to certain other things.
Right. Got you.
So that's why they're like,
Don't be out here dancing, y'all.
right,
you young
because you
young
know what
folks.
it's gonna go exact. And like I have heard stuff like that said in my life.
Have you?
Yeah, like not like dancing specifically, but like don't dance a certain way.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Okay. I
Yeah,
guess.
so
I feel like
it's
we're
the same.
reaching, but I can see it. Yeah.
I feel like it's the same kind of thing. But anyway, so what part of what made this like relevant to the story is that the fiddle also took an L here again, because it's when you're partying like that back in those days, you need an instrument to make music,
And the
and
fiddle got that crank. Yeah.
yeah, it's one of the instruments that are around that's like portable enough to just whip out a fiddle and be like, all right, we're partying right
Got
here.
you.
So it kind of digs that association with just general sinfulness further in. And of course, like if you're associated with sin, you're also kind of associated with the devil.
Yeah.
Um, however, it's not like, so because it's like such ancient history, it's hard to, well, I couldn't find something that pinned it down specifically. Um, except for the fact that like, so at this point I think it's safe to say that um the violin is kind of associated with the devil,
Okay.
but then some other things happen that like further cement it's like if you're hammering in a nail, the nail's like halfway in right
Mm-hmm.
now. And so this next thing, we're jumping a little bit forward in time,
Mm-hmm.
to the sometime in the early 1700s.
Okay.
Um, but um, here's where I think, based on what I could find, we start to make the jump from the violin as an instrument that is associated with the devil to the devil actively playing the violin.
Okay.
Um, and so, like going back again, if I were to tell you that I was listening to a song about the devil playing the violin and a person attempting to compete with the devil playing the violin,
Mm-hmm.
you would probably say that it was The Devil Went Down to Georgia, right?
Yeah.
But that song, you can also describe a song called The Devil's Trill, or The Devil's Trill Sonata, which was written in the 1700s by a man named,
Ooh.
here we go.
Sorry in advance.
Giuseppe Tartini.
Maybe Giuseppe?
Giuseppe, that's probably it. Listen,
Yikes.
it's spelled Guiseppe.
I feel like if I looked at that, I would be like, oh, that's probably Giuseppe.
You okay, whatever. So we
Everyone's
can't
not
all be
cultured, I know.
sure. Yeah, definitely.
Watch I be
Um
wrong.
and technically, apparently it goes by so many different names, like it's called the Devil's Trill, the Devil's Trill Sonata. But apparently its official name is Violin Sonata in G minor.
Okay.
Um
Okay. So, wow, that was rude. Sorry. So the violin sonata, and you said G major?
G minor.
G minor, excuse me. Sorry.
Minor is the sad one.
Yeah, right. Okay, in G minor. Um, how did it get okay, so like you listen to pieces of music.
Yeah.
At what point did they like make the connection that this is the devil playing the violin? That's what you're supposed to
Well,
imagine.
I'm going to explain that.
Okay.
There's a very specific reason that happened.
Okay.
And I think in this case, like, you know, sometimes people are like, oh, that's crazy. Where'd you get that idea?
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, like,
You
yeah,
can see it. Okay.
I can see it, and you'll see why. But the song is Tartini's most memorable work, as far as I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it was written sometime in the 1700s. There appears to be some debate about exactly when. And I was actually able to track down the story behind why its nickname is the Devil's Trill. And so the following is an excerpt from the travel memoir of French astronomer Jerome Lalande.
Wait a minute.
Deja, when I tell you, I
Why
had
have
to.
the astronomers join the conversation?
I could not figure out why. It seems like these two people just knew each other, like
Okay.
Tartini
I
and
guess
this
that would make
astronomer.
sense. Yeah.
But like, I really couldn't figure out. The only reason I'm using this guy's name is because I really wanted to figure out where this story comes from,
Okay.
and this is what I ended up finding.
All right. Okay, cool.
So as like I said, as far as I can tell, this is the source of the legend. And again, this is Jerome speaking here. He, and he means Tartini,
Mm-hmm.
dreamed one night in 1713 that he had made a compact with the devil, who promised him to be at his service on all occasions. And during this vision, everything succeeded according to his mind. In short, he imagined he gave the devil his violin in order to discover what kind of musician he was, when to his great astonishment, he heard him play a solo so singularly beautiful and executed with such superior taste and precision that it surpassed all he has ever heard or conceived in his life. So great was his surprise and so exquisite his delight upon this occasion that it deprived him of the power of breathing. He awoke with the violence of his sensation and instantly seized his fiddle in hopes of expressing what he had just heard, but in vain. He, however, then composed a piece which is perhaps the best of all his works. He called it the Devil's Sonata. But it was so inferior to what his sleep had produced that he declared he should have broken his instrument and abandoned music forever if he could have subsisted by any other means.
Wow. So he had a dream
Mm-hmm.
where he met the devil.
Mm-hmm.
The devil played this fire solo
Yeah,
that was just unmatched.
Yep.
He tried to recreate it. It was so good that he couldn't recreate it. He was like, I'm done.
Well, he did keep doing music,
But he felt like he should have been.
yeah, but apparently only because he just didn't have any other way to pay his bills. But like if he could, like if he thought he could just be a shoemaker and
He
quit
would have.
music, he would have, because I guess he felt like there was nothing to reach for anymore because he knew
That's
he would never.
insane. That kind of makes you want to like research him and figure out like,
What kind of person he was.
well, not even before, more so like after, you know what I mean? What
Yeah,
kind of like shift is that? If so, at this point in your life, you like, oh, I'm gonna try my best to be the best, I don't know, violinist or whatever.
yeah,
And then you have a dream and you're like, I can't reach that. I'm done.
yeah.
Like, how does your life go from there?
Like I've heard the Devil's Trill, and it's pretty easy to find just because it's so old. You can just listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
And ideally, I'll have a link to it in the show notes or whatever.
Got you. Yeah.
It's pretty good, but like you have to wonder, what did he hear? You know what I mean?
Right. If he's saying that it was better than that.
Right. And also, I have no idea who did this artwork, but apparently, this is like the like if you look up records of this song, this is the art that'll be on it.
It's probably terrifying.
I just sent the link to you.
Okay.
Do you
So
want to describe this?
yeah, that's I guess for the people listening, it's like, I don't know, it's beige, black and white. There's no color. There's a man. He's like laying on a bed by himself. He's got his nice little slippers next to him, and on the end of his bed is the devil, who is jacked, playing a violin to him. Well, I think he's obviously sleeping, like dreaming it. He's sitting on the bed and he's playing this violin. Um, Imagine the devil how you would, I guess. Creepy, a little, unnerving, and he has wings. And
Yeah.
that's about it.
So I feel like and this is like a legendary thing. Like this is I'm not going to say well known, but it's like it's a pervasive myth.
Right. So I wonder, like, because I mean, up until now, my only I guess, experience as far as a song that has the devil like associated and playing the violin is "The Devil Went Down to Georgia."
Hmm.
This now is, I guess, the first one on record of a song like that.
As far as I know,
That's
anyway.
right. That's what I said. As far as we know, I wonder if there is like more in between,
Like in between
like
now and
between
then.
this and "The Devil Went Down to Georgia." Yeah,
Yes.
there are.
Yes.
And I'm assuming
There
you're gonna
are.
get
I
there.
have three
Okay.
more events. Yeah.
Okay.
Or
Let me
two more,
slow my
three.
roll.
Yeah, but there definitely is because, like, basically, as I was reading this, at each step, I was like, okay, that gets me to that gets me to this part, but it doesn't get me to this other part. You know what I mean? So, like, the
Mhm.
first thing got me to the violin is a sinful instrument, like just associating the violin as a part of the devil's
Right.
domain.
And so now after this, we're at the point of the devil plays the violin
Right. We're
very
at
well.
right. We're at the point where the devil has achieved virtuoso status with the violin. Um so then moving forward just a little bit, I want to say to the early 1800s. Let me see. Let me double check myself. Um
Side
okay,
note,
so
if you're listening and you've never heard The Devil Went Down to Georgia, you should listen immediately after this.
yeah, I would recommend listening to the Devil's Trill Sonata too. I really like it. That's actually this song is how I got on this kick in the first place, weirdly.
Really?
Yeah,
That's a
because
little concerning, but you know,
well, no,
we'll
hear
get
me
to
out,
it.
hear me out. I was listening to like I was listening to this song called The Isle of the Dead on YouTube, which is another like slow like classical song.
Hmm.
And the YouTube algorithm sent me to this song, The Devil's Trill.
Okay.
And then I was like, okay,
Wait a
what?
minute.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
exactly.
got you. Okay, cool. Let's continue.
Um, so moving to the late 1700s and the early 1800s, we come to another violinist um, who helps us make the jump from the devil playing the violin to the devil giving violin skills to people. And his
Okay.
name is yet another Italian name. And there's only one way my brain will tell me to say this, but it
Okay.
feels like a meme to me, so I think I'm saying it wrong.
Hmm.
Niccolo Paganini.
Okay.
Um, and his deal is he was basically a child prodigy.
Okay.
And perhaps well, if not the best violinist to ever live, definitely one of them. Like if you go ahead.
I just feel like as a well, I guess I wasn't band and not in strings, but as a band person used to be,
Hmm.
I feel like it's crazy that I've never heard of
These people.
these people, but I guess it's kind of touchy to talk about. I
Yeah,
don't
but
know.
also like there's a lot of I feel like there's a lot of you only learn so much.
That's
Like
true.
even if you name who's like the best composer ever.
You're asking me?
Yeah, like there's like one person you're gonna name.
Probably I would say Mozart or something like that.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
like there's so many other composers. Like you
Okay.
don't they just give you like the nearest.
The American-ish version, kind
Yeah,
of.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
So you might not necessarily hear about everyone. So Niccolo, and I'm gonna call him Paganini, because there's another very famous Italian named Niccolo, Machiavelli.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
That was his first name as well. So I don't want to say that and people to go, huh? So Paganini was one of the best violinists to ever live. He was so frighteningly talented that the people of the day believed that his skills were supernatural. And
Wow.
I think you can see where this is going.
Yeah, I do.
But one of the weird things here is that in a way they weren't wrong. Like there's speculation that part of the reason that his body was just a little bit different than the regular person, which is part of why he could play so well, but that's not confirmed. And we'll get into it later.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing to note here is that Paganini was a very distinct looking person. He was described as being very tall, thin, and pale. Um, he had dark hair with like hollow cheeks, and apparently he had like high cheekbones, and then like the cheeks were like kind of sunken and hollow.
Oh.
Um, and he had like thin lips as well. In addition to this, his fingers are said to have been significantly longer than normal.
So to
And
other people, he looked.
he like there aren't any actual photos of him. There's one fake one that's circulating around. Someone like 100 years later made a fake photo of him that people thought was him for a very long time until they realized this
He
technology
wasn't here.
wouldn't have been there when he was
Yeah.
around.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you look up a picture of him, it's a picture of like a really short looking guy
Mm-hmm.
holding a violin. But that's not him apparently.
Interesting. You think they did that to like, I don't know, what would you gain from that? You know what I mean?
Uh, Money, fame,
Okay. I
because
guess if you could be like, I
just
have the
here,
only picture of him, blah blah blah. But I'm
yeah,
saying
and
like,
like
what
he's
would
such
you
a
gain from based on this description?
mhm,
It's completely opposite.
right, but I don't know that everybody would have known the description of him. They might have just known that like he was a distinct looking person,
Person. And for
and
a
he was
lot of people,
also
got you.
right.
Mm.
And adding to this whole situation, like in addition to him being incredibly talented and looking really weird, he just preferred to wear black apparently. So like really not helping his situation. Um
That's sounding like, they're gonna look at me anyway. I might as well. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
I think
I
there's a little bit
understand.
of like lean in
Yeah.
happening there.
I get it. I
Um
can understand why you might do that.
yeah,
Especially if he's like an artist and you want to like add some pizzazz to
branding.
your
Yeah.
aura or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was so talented, and keep in mind he's a child prodigy. So he
Right.
was so talented that he had multiple famous teachers. And each one of them, like two or three of them, basically like taught him for a little bit and went, I can't teach this guy anything, and handed him off to their mentor. So like he gets passed up this daisy chain of like masters, and that's who
Wow.
he gets tutored by. And in addition to that, he does the thing that is really common with people who reach like the pinnacle of a skill where their parents just borderline abuse them, having them learn this thing at a very young age. So he
Mhm.
started training at like 5.
Mm.
On I don't think he started on the violin. I forget what other instrument it was. And then he switches to the violin at 7. Um, and eventually he gets picked up by all these old masters and they train him. So by the time he turned 15, he was already touring.
Wow.
Um,
That's amazing.
yeah, and he was like he was that he was a rock star essentially.
Yeah.
Um, and as sometimes happens with rock stars at a young age, his fame led to the rock star lifestyle, a lot of gambling, drinking, and womanizing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that in turn led to a brief bout of depression, which added to like his mystique a little bit. But he does eventually come out of the depression.
Well, good for him.
Also, fun fact, going back to something that I pinned earlier, Paganini had an Amati violin. Um,
Wow.
he lost it in a bet, but he did have it. um, well, because he was
He
living
was,
the
yeah, he
lifestyle,
was. It's
yeah.
fine.
Um, and also apparently during this period, rumors started circulating around that he murdered a woman and used her intestines for the strings of his violin. So like,
What?
so at this point, like the idea that he's like connected to some kind of dark
Supernatural
force,
being is
yeah. And I
already.
think at this point, specifically the devil, like it's all just like becoming like this self perpetuating cycle.
But I just feel like, okay, so let's backtrack to, let's say, the first guy who made the song, right? The first song that we've mentioned, at least, the
Mm-hmm.
piece. That would have had to been, well, I guess not. I guess the idea of like the violin and the devil connected would have had to been so widely spread at this point
Yeah.
that like when somebody saw this guy, I was like, wow, he's this great at 15. He also plays the violin. It's got to be the devil.
Yeah,
I know that sounds simple, but in my brain, that sounds like astonishing, like how
it
quickly that spread.
it's because it's so deep. Like you have to remember that it came over from the east, and
Yeah.
they already. So like I can't even think of a good example. It's like it's almost like they tie like the violin to being the instrument of the devil, the way we tie like Italians and spaghetti. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
just a thing that it's just a thing. Um, and again, really not helped by the way he looks and the way he acts and
Right.
all this other stuff that's going on. So because of his talent, appearance, and the pre-existing association of the violin with the devil, um, rumors began to circulate that in order to achieve his talent, Paganini had sold his soul to the devil.
I just want to know, because this man is 15 at this point. I
Well,
just want to
he's
know.
aged, but like, yeah,
I know, but people are already, by the time he's 15, they're speculating like something's
yeah.
going on. I just want to know what time this child prodigy, who's probably always playing the violin, would have had time to just chill out with the devil and been like, listen, because he started at 5. So
Yeah.
there's
Well, there's
people who
also
had to do that at like 3.
it's not like a nailed down rumor because there were also rumors that it was his mom who made the deal with the devil.
Oh,
So
okay. I
so
could see that. Like
basically
a parent made a
generally
deal to have a child prodigy type thing.
right. And there's
People
also
would do
like
that
rumors that he is himself the devil. Like
because he's so good.
yeah, so it's not like this like singular. It's not a media story the way that they work now. It's just like they
Yeah.
basically all of them looking up and going, something's going on there.
What an interaction that would have been for the guy before him to have like heard him play or met him.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? That would have been
The
interesting.
oh yeah, well, like what would they have said? Yeah,
Yeah.
who knows? Who knows? Um, there's something. Oh yes. So just to like give some color to like uh his playing, apparently, and I couldn't find like a source for this,
Mm-hmm.
but I saw it mentioned a couple times that it was said that he could play like 12 notes a second.
Wow.
Like he was insanely fast. And apparently there's a movie about this guy called The Devil's Violinist, and the guy who plays him in the movie is himself a child prodigy violinist who apparently also has achieved the feat of being able to play 12 notes a second.
Wow.
This whole situation is crazy. And additionally, he was one of the first violinists to memorize his music rather than to have it on stage. So what this led to was him flailing around like a madman on stage as he's like
Playing.
right,
Right.
right. So his rock star lifestyle combined with several medical factors, I believe he got like syphilis or something,
Oh.
which they treated with mercury, which it was medical science was not there.
There's so much going on.
Medical science wasn't there at the time. It led him to becoming progressively weaker as time went on. Like he basically aged, he started dying in his 50s. And it was apparent, like people could tell
Wow.
that he was on his way out.
They probably thinking, dang, the devil trying to let that man go.
But here's where it gets really wild because a couple of things happen that make it like
Worse.
so what happens is not everyone, but like it's clear that he's dying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a priest comes to him and says, listen, I know you're on your way out. Do you want me to perform last rites for you?
Mm-hmm.
Paganini turns it down. So he turns the last rites down from the priest. Apparently, his rationale was, I'm not going to be dead like tomorrow, so we don't need to do this right now. However, the fact that people already think he's Satan and him saying, I don't need a priest, just blows it up even further.
That's insane.
Deja, it's not even over. So he goes on to die pretty shortly after that, right?
Uh-huh.
But because his like status as being unholy is so entrenched,
Mm-hmm.
his local church refuses to bury him on consecrated ground,
Wow.
which of course only makes it even worse. Um, and so like there's a lot of other things that happen there. Like because they refuse to bury him on consecrated ground, his body gets passed around for a couple years. Um, it ends up in some weird places, but I didn't at this
Yeah.
point. I was like, okay, this by itself is its own thing.
Yeah. That's
And
wow, yeah.
we've already made the point that like this guy was so like famous and impactful that I think there's an argument to be made from like each of these stories is like kind of like helping carry it forward
Mm-hmm.
even further, like making sure that this association with the devil doesn't die out. And furthermore, we've gone from the devil, the violin being the devil's instrument, to the devil playing the violin,
Mm-hmm.
to the devil giving a human the ability to play the violin.
Mm-hmm.
And now we start to get to um a more modern
Interpretation,
person, right?
which is
So
I'm battling the devil for my soul.
well, not yet. There's another step in here.
Oh, okay. Excuse me for
Um
jumping ahead.
so have you ever heard of Robert Johnson?
I have not.
So Robert Johnson is a blues man from Mississippi.
Okay. Okay.
Um
Things I can comprehend.
and so apparently the devil's domain extends beyond just the violin and I guess just to all portable string-based instruments because Robert Johnson was a guitarist, right?
Okay.
So his story is that um he was one of those musicians that
Mm.
only really became famous after he died.
Oh, that's
Um
most unfortunate, but yeah.
he died super young too. I think he was like 27, 28.
Oh, wow.
Um so he was born in Mississippi and apparently did his early practicing with a string nailed to the side of a barn.
Wow.
I mean, I guess they were like poor, which makes sense for the period of time. And uh, if it wasn't apparent, he was a black man. So
I thought you were gonna stop. I thought you were gonna call him a black. I was like, we
Deja,
gotta cut
please,
that out.
no, he was a black man um, in Mississippi back in the day. So things weren't as good as they could have been for him, I'm sure.
Right.
So after his like bootleg string instrument practice, he would go to a local juke joint, which is like it's a music, it's where you go to get like food and music,
Yeah.
basically at
I'm
the
sorry.
time.
Juke joint is just hilarious to me.
Okay. And in between performances, he would just get on stage and start playing his own songs.
Okay.
Um, but apparently he was awful. Like he was so bad that like he would get laughed and or booed off the stage pretty frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually he I guess got tired of this and left town for like 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that when he returned, he was incredible. Like he apparently his like playing had improved so drastically that it inspired rumors that he had traveled to a crossroad and basically summoned the devil and sold his soul for talent.
Wow.
So in
Okay,
this,
so nobody thought, man, maybe he just sucks because he was playing on a string attached to a nail, and then he
people
went
don't think like
away,
that.
you know, got a guitar and actually learned how to play guitar on a guitar. Or, I mean, a
Well,
bass.
that
Sorry, he's
my
playing bass.
my understand he's playing
It
guitar.
was guitar. Sorry.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
my understanding is that's what historians think now because there apparently was a guitarist somewhere in the area. His name was like something Zimmerman or something.
Mm-hmm.
And they think what happened is he left and basically got tutored and had with the benefit of like him really wanting to play guitar and actually having access to a guitar and a teacher.
Right.
Just like
Got better naturally.
right.
But
Um but also this touches on another thing where there's this really old connection between crossroads and like demons.
When
Um,
we say crossroads,
a crossroad,
like literally,
yeah, literally like a crossroad, like
okay,
a road going one way, another
and
coming through it
another one coming the other
perpendicularly.
way.
Yeah. So
Wow,
how the legend goes is that crossroads are seen as like intersections between
the spirit
like
realms.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a thing to like summon devils and demons at crossroads and things like that. So they were like, "Oh, obviously he went and traded his soul for talent." But this rumor was further helped along by the fact that two of his most popular songs are named Crossroad Blues and Hellhound on My Tail. Um,
These
now,
coincidences are just too on point.
well, and that's the thing. I don't know because like crossroads are like a thing already.
Yeah,
And
but
so are
also if he knows, you know what I mean? Like if he's hearing these rumors
yeah.
and you're trying to be famous, I get why you would feed in.
There's I think there's some branding that's
Yeah,
happening. Um
hell on
so
my tail.
So yeah, so but apparently those songs don't really have anything to do. It's not like he's singing, "Oh, I sold my soul." Like they're
Yeah,
just
it's
blues
just the
songs
title,
about being sad and poor or
right?
whatever. But like at this point it's too late.
I'm just trying to figure out. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but the jump from the violin being the devil's instrument to anything with strings,
Well,
any string instrument,
anything with string that's my
your
emphasis. But
interpretation,
like
right?
if you look at a guitar, it's
It's a
it's a
big
sideways
violin.
violin.
Yeah, it
Like
is.
it's the same kind of deal. Um And so that was the last big point that I found in between us and The Devil Went Down to Georgia.
Wow.
And I didn't do a whole lot of research on The Devil Went Down to Georgia just because that wasn't the point
Mm-hmm.
of the exercise that I was doing. But I do think it's interesting that up until this point, um, we've made like a thematic jump with the legend. So before, like I keep saying, it was the violin is just like connected to the devil.
Mm-hmm.
And then for a long time there, like those second two with Tartini and Paganini,
Mm-hmm.
um, we were people either in collusion with the devil or like trying to get something from the devil.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then with people like Robert Johnson, Robert Johnson and Paganini to a
Mm-hmm.
degree, we hit a point where we're sacrificing something to the devil to get what he has.
Right.
Um, but with The Devil Went Down to Georgia, we suddenly hit this point where we're actively overthrowing the devil. Because like the story of that song is the devil shows up.
In
He's
Georgia.
looking to steal a soul. He's looking to make a deal.
Because he was
He's
way
in a bind. He's
behind.
way behind. um, and he finds Johnny and he says, "Hey man, if let's have a fiddle off,
Right.
and if you win, you get." I think he promises them the violin,
Yeah. He
and
gets the
then
fiddle of gold. Or
right,
if he loses, Johnny gives up his soul.
right. So,
Seems like a fair trade, I guess.
but like crucially here is that Johnny beats him. Like
Yeah.
he shows up, and Johnny like it tells him to sit down because he's the best fiddler to ever live, I guess.
Does Johnny actually beat him? Now, of course, if you're listening, you got to go listen to the song. But when the devil plays, obviously, he cheats. He's the devil, and
Right.
he's got a bass in the back.
Yeah,
There's
he
it's
has
a
a whole
whole
band. Yeah.
ensemble, yeah, and it's a really good part. And then Johnny, he fiddles it up or whatever, but like,
Hmm.
does he really beat him?
So I feel like that's a taste question. I feel like for the target audience, Johnny has won. But and also you have to keep in mind that the devil does cheat. Like a lot of the coolest parts about the devil's like part of that song has nothing to do with the fiddle. It's like the bass.
That is true. You're right.
Yeah.
That's
So
true.
I think Johnny won.
Okay.
But like I thought that was really interesting that I feel like it says something about like where people are at that the story has made this move over to like we've claimed music from the devil, like
Right.
we've passed him.
Do you think that has something to do with it being more like American? You
It
know what I
could be.
mean? Wow. Rude.
I knew that was gonna happen. I should have. I knew I should have said something.
It's fine.
But they, I think yes, that's part of it. But I think just in general, people are more confident with our mastery over existence.
Mm.
So like I've heard in some of my history classes, I was exposed to the idea that like what a god is like people trying to like reconcile their place in a world that is way that's threatening and more powerful than them.
Mm-hmm.
The specific quote that I read was uh early mankind was faced with a situation that was so outside of their ability to do anything about it that all they could do is basically look up at the sky and ask it to stop.
Mm.
And in the modern era, we're a little bit past that. Like
Right.
natural disasters can happen and stuff, but it's not the same as when like I don't know, if you get rained on a little bit too much, pneumonia might kill you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So I
Definitely.
think there might be a little bit of that happening. Um,
Hmm.
but I don't know. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I think it is too. I think it's crazy that there are like so many more like steps before where my brain had started. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of cool. I don't know. This has nothing to do with the violin specifically, but throughout this whole thing, I just kept thinking about what's that piece called? Dante's Inferno? Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm. Where they journey into hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just I don't know. It's crazy. I kept thinking about that because I guess it's kind of sort of about the
It's
devil
connected to
and
hell. Yeah.
music and stuff like that. But yeah, that's really interesting. Hmm.
Yep. So the thing that got me is how far back it went. Like I was expecting, because I already kind of knew about the Tartini thing. So at first I was expecting that to be, well, I didn't already know, but that's where I started.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting it to just be that, but once I asked myself the question of like, why would this man even be dreaming that the devil is playing the violin? Like, was this just a random occurrence?
Yeah.
And no, apparently it goes all the way back to like the Crusades, maybe further. I thought that
Hmm.
was pretty wild.
That's really interesting. I could like, I mean, obviously there's no way to know, but I could definitely see like the Crusades being like if somebody said that is the definite origins of it, I
Mm-hmm.
could see that because I feel like a lot of stuff that we think now kind of starts from this group of people over here believe this. We wanted that land, so we made everything they did seem bad. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it
Oh,
just
and to be fair, because I ended up reading like someone's thesis paper about this to just try and get a handle on it.
mm-hmm.
Um, to be fair, it wasn't like the Muslims were just chilling over there,
Mm-hmm.
and the Pope at the time was just like, well, time to reclaim the Holy Land.
Right.
If I remember correctly, what happened is there was a third group of people that was in control of the
mm-hmm.
Holy Land
Mm-hmm.
that allowed the Christians to just make their pilgrimages pretty much whenever they wanted.
Oh,
And then whoever ended up having it during the Crusades took it from those people and were like, no, get out. We don't
I got you.
we
Okay.
don't support what it is that you do.
Right.
And so that's when like so there was like animosity there already, and then they basically exaggerated things for propaganda purposes.
Hmm. Well, yeah. That was a really good one. Very interesting. I never would have. Also, did you know that there's like another version? Apparently, on one of the Rock Band games, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what it's called. There's just like there's a guitar version because in the game, the boss level, you battle the devil in a guitar solo. Same thing.
See,
You
yeah.
sold your sold your soul to the devil to
Mm-hmm.
become this amazing like guitarist or whatever. And you
Mm-hmm.
got to beat him playing The Devil Went Down to Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a guitar version instead of the I guess, violin version.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. I didn't even know there was like multiple versions of it or
This
whatever.
is this is my first hearing of that, but I can't pretend to be surprised at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know. But yeah, that was a good topic. Very interesting.
yep.
That's it, right? We're wrapping it up.
Yeah, that's all I have. Unless you have anything to add, I feel like we ran a little short this time.
Uh,
Um,
I thought it was a good time. It's fine with
okay,
me.
well,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's been my spiel for this week. I have no idea what our next topic is going to be because I haven't been told.
Yeah.
Um,
I haven't been told either. My brain will come up with something eventually.
yeah,
But like we always say, the next episode will be different. So if this one wasn't for you, come back and try the next one.
I can't imagine this one wasn't for you, and you're here at the end now. But
I mean,
if you are, we appreciate you, King. You know
maybe,
what? If that's the case, leave a comment and you tell us what you want to hear.
yeah, I mean that could
If
be
you're
interesting.
that dedicated.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I guess we need to like figure out an outro at some point. I don't know. Come back
Yeah.
and listen to us next time.
Yeah. Once
And
again, I'm Xzavier,
I'm Deja.
and this has been Mixed Frequency.
All right.
All right.
All right. Hold on. Let me stop.